Top 15 wrestlers that need to get their ink removed. Tattoo nightmare.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
15.
Hulk Hogan, Immortal Ink. Even the biggest Hogan fans tend to forget about the ink on his back. Hulk nearly broke the internet when fans found out about his Immortal back tattoo, which is written in massive block letters on his upper back. Now, maybe due to the negative reaction the tattoo received, we've rarely seen the ink. However, it's still present as we saw a mirror side of it while Hulk recently rode on his speedboat. Thankfully, he's been wearing cut-off t-shirts normally, so the tat isn't as present. Okay, enough ripping on the Hulkster. Despite the fact that his legacy took a bit of a beating lately, he remains one of the most popular pro wrestlers of all time.
14.
Mr. Kennedy, the clown tattoo. Perhaps worse than Kennedy's post-WWE run is his lackluster tattoo on his arm. Even back in his WWE days, Anderson stated that he was going to get the ink removed. However, judging by recent pics, the tat is still very much there. Although many can't figure out what the hell it is, Anderson has deemed it a picture of a clown, although it looks nothing like a clown. In truth, the former WWE star got the tat as a teen, after he was named the class clown. Despite wanting to get the tattoo removed for years, as of May it was still there. His other back tattoo isn't as bad, but the procedure took a lot of time, as Anderson recalls the process taking 8 hours. He certainly can't say the same for the clown tat that looks like it was drawn up in less than 10 minutes.
13.
Viktor, Danzig tattoo. Here are a couple of facts you likely didn't know about WWE Ascension member Viktor. 1. He was a former FCW tag champion alongside Brad Maddox. 2. He was pushed as the Odd Heavyweight champion twice. And 3. The very worst, he's got an awful design that's got an even worse meaning behind it. Located on his left arm, Viktor has a tattoo with our logo along with the writing Danzig, a tribute to one of his favorite bands. Now Vince doesn't like tats in general, so just imagine the boss seeing a wrestler with a tat dedicated to a band. Yikes. Online speculation even went as far as to say that the tat killed his WWE run. Now that's a bit of a stretch, but in truth such claims were made. Perhaps removing the tat can help resurface his career. 12. Heath Slater, Weird Clown Tribal Ink. Heath's another guy that has been with the WWE longer than most realize. He signed a deal with the WWE over a decade ago in 2006, and has been with the company ever since. His image has gone through various changes since his main roster debut. For one, he no longer rocks the longer head of hair. Another change is he touched up his awful tattoo, although despite the additions to it, it's still very much visible and present to this day. The tat was a lot worse during his main roster debut, as it was just a single tattoo located on the shoulder of his right arm. The coloring was dull as hell, and the design was truly horrifying. Slater added to it in recent years, putting different designs and thankfully different colors, though the art of his initial tattoo is still very much visible.
11.
Matt Morgan, back tat. Matt Morgan might have the worst back tattoo in pro wrestling history. In fact, that tat is so bad that it actually looks incomplete. Some speculated that Morgan had removed the tattoo. However, in a recent Instagram post, while hitting up his followers with some serious flexing, the tat was merely visible and looking just as awful. Thankfully, Morgan did touch up his other arm tattoos, and they've changed for the better. However, somehow, someway, the back tattoo remains. The worst part about the design is the size of the tattoo. Removing such art would be just as bad as inking it in the first place, if not worse. The decision to get the art is probably even worse for Morgan given the fact that he's also bodybuilding. Showcasing his physique just sheds more light on the awful ink.
10.
10. Perry's Saturn face ink. Some would argue that Saturn's career went downhill following an in-ring altercation with a WWE enhancement talent. Before the incident, Saturn was being pushed by the WWE. However, after he snapped in the ring due to a botched move, his push was halted, and he was punished with the mop gimmick. Although Saturn actually got over with the persona, it was the kiss of death for his WWE career. His post-WWE life led to a big-time spiral. Saturn grew depressed, turning to drugs in order to deal with some ongoing wounds. Not only did Saturn get some disturbing face ink, but he also disappeared, going homeless and relying on drugs for the longest time. He's now finally trying to get back on his feet. We wish the 51-year-old nothing but the best during his ongoing recovery.
9.
9. Nikki Bella, Fiery Heart ink. It's almost impossible to find something we'd change about Nikki Bella, whether you're a fan of hers or not. There's no denying what a beauty she is. However, she does have one questionable feature, and that's a tacky piece of ink located on her backside. She got the tat as a teenager along with her sister Brie, who inked a fairy in the same location. Entering motherhood, Brie got the ink removed on an episode of Total Divas. Brie teased Nikki about getting the ink removed as well, though the Bella sister did not agree as she made the claim that soon-to-be husband John Cena was a fan of the design. We can live with the ink given the fact that it's quite small. However, given the current crop of female talents, she definitely has the worst tattoo.
8.
8. Hardcore Holly, tribal designs and race car flags. Man, was the WWE ever a different place back when Holly made his debut in 1994. His initial persona was deemed a knicker driver turned pro wrestler, hence the name Sparkplug Holly. Everything from the name to his attire was tacky as hell. Not too surprising the gimmick wouldn't last, and Holly would completely alter his look into Hardcore Holly, a gimmick that was much more suitable for the Attitude Era. Well, it looks like he might have enjoyed the gimmick more than we thought. Back in his spark-plugged days, Holly had the design of 2 flags on his attire, and he got the exact design tattooed on his forearm. As if that wasn't bad enough, he filled up his other arm with awful tribal designs. The coloring of both tattoos just makes both pieces of art that much worse.
7.
7. Bray Wyatt, back wings. Before he turned into the mystical and beloved Bray Wyatt character we now know and love, the former WWE champion was actually struggling to find a persona that worked. His brother Bo was thriving down in development, but the same could not be said for Bray. He made his FCW debut as Alex Rotundo, but would later change that gimmick to Husky Harris once he made his way onto the main roster, serving as a part of the NXT competition. During the time frame, everything about Wyatt was completely different, from his persona to his entire image. Wyatt wrestled without a t-shirt, and this showcased his lackluster back art that pretty much takes up his entire back. His other tattoos are pretty darn cool, but the same can't be said for his back art. Thankfully nowadays, he hides the ink thanks to his new attire.
6.
6. Buff Bagwell, bicep tattoo. It's only fitting that Bagwell decided to get a bicep tattoo. It seemed pretty cool during his WCW days. However, as he gets older, and the years move along, the tat seems to be looking worse and worse. From the color to the design, the tat is just bland as hell, and something that Bagwell would be better off without. Believe it or not, Bagwell is still appearing at various indie events, although he recently announced a farewell tour. Nearing his 50s, Bagwell no longer looks to be in ring shape. However, despite his retirement looming, you can still expect Bagwell to remain vocal pertaining to anything pro wrestling. He recently took a shot at the WWE for their Hall of Fame. Perhaps taking a shot at the company was a lot easier given the fact that he's pretty much blacklisted by the company due to his awful stint that only lasted a couple of weeks.
5.
5. Michael Cole, bizarre pieces of art. We're not entirely sure what Michael Cole was thinking when he got those tattoos. They look so odd that they appear to have been drawn on by a child. It's hard to distinguish what the tats represent. Quite frankly, that art is almost impossible to figure out. The hearts look like something a die-hard HBK fan would get, and those faces located on his back are just bad. Again, the coloring of the tattoos makes the art that much worse. We got a rare glimpse of Cole's tats back at WrestleMania, when he took part in a rare match taking on Jerry the King Lawler. Few remember the match, though his tats were something lots of fans recall due to the atrociousness of the ink. We haven't seen the tats since, and that's probably for the best.
4.
4. Scott Steiner, front and back disasters. Thus far in this article of Nightmares, we've featured ink that was specifically located in one area. Steiner, however, gets the recognition for having awful inked both on the front and the back. The coloring on his back tattoos is just awful. The worst part is that the tat is so big that it's pretty impossible to remove. The front of Steiner is equally as bad, as he added to the cross heart tattoo by supporting it with a chain similar to Mysterio's ink. Now Ray's Mexican tattoo isn't the best, however his chain is a lot better than Steiner's. Everything from the coloring to the design just seems incredibly off. As the years move along, Scott will likely regret these pieces of art more and more.
3.
3. Batista, the belly ring. Even Batista himself regretted the decision to get the belly button tattoo. He admitted it himself during the Chris Jericho podcast. He's got some cool ink on his arms, adding to them over the years. However, the belly button tattoo remains untouched. For his Guardians of the Galaxy role, the tattoo was basically taken out as the makeup team did a great job in covering it up. You can see photos online of the transition made with and without the tattoo during the film. By all accounts, many believed the tat was gone. However, that's not the case, as he recently showcased the fact that the ink is still very much there. Perhaps WWE fans will get a better view of it in the not-so-distant future, as Batista is rumored to return in the very near future.
2.
2. AJ Lee, Championship Ink. Before the Women's Revolution, AJ Lee was well ahead of the curve. She was a lifelong fan of the WWE, and was just so different from the others. Unlike CM Punk, she has admitted to not being the biggest fan of inking herself, which really shows how important the tattoo was to her. Located on her top neck, the tat represents the date of her first championship victory. The art looks like a barcode, similar to something someone in jail would get. Lee herself made the association, claiming the tat meant that much more due to the fact that it was a culmination of her 14-year journey. Now the meaning might be cool, but given the way her WWE career ended, it does lose a lot of value. Likely, she isn't flaunting the tattoo nowadays, and luckily for her, it's not in a visible spot.
1.
1. The Undertaker, neck tattoo. When it comes to the Undertaker's professional and personal life, the guy is nearly flawless. However, he's undergone a couple of divorces, and one of them resulted in an embarrassing modification to a tattoo. Back in 2000, Taker married Sarah Frank. Evidently at the time the two were very much in love, which prompted Taker's Sarah tattoo. In an awkward twist, the two would divorce in 2007. Making matters worse, the tat was the most visible of all his art as it was located on his darn throat area. As you likely realized by now, the deadman would get the ink touched up. The Sarah tattoo is officially gone, however the memory of the tat will live on forever despite his new neck ink. In a perfect world the ink would be removed, however it now appears to be too late for that with his new tat. We don't expect Taker to tattoo Michelle's name on his body, no matter how well things are going between the two.
Yeah.